Ford Falcon XB became the most recognized movie car from Australia, but did you know it was nearly painted white? What if I told you the supercharger on top was completely fake and the car couldn't exceed 70 miles per hour during filming? Get ready for more shocking truths about the Ford Falcon XB. Number 20. The car cost exactly $50.
Metalwork is one of the main...
Mad Max's production designer found the Interceptor in a wrecking yard scheduled for crushing. The owner wanted it gone immediately and quoted $50 Australian. That's roughly $35 American dollars in 1979 money. The car was a wreck. Previous owner had blown the engine racing it illegally on highways. The transmission was stuck in second gear. Body panels were dented and scratched. The interior smelled like mold and dead animals. Most people would have passed. Production designer John Dowding saw potential where others saw garbage. He paid cash on the spot and had it towed to the workshop. The production budget for vehicle modifications was $8,000 total. They had to build the Interceptor, the other police vehicles, and all the villain cars from that amount. The $50 Falcon got the lion's share, roughly $3,000 in modifications. Everything else was cosmetic tricks and salvage yard parts. The deal was so cheap that director George Miller didn't believe it initially. He thought Dowding was padding numbers elsewhere. When Dowding showed the receipt, Miller realized they'd stumbled onto something special. That $50 investment became a cultural icon worth millions today. Number 19. The supercharger was carved from wood. That menacing supercharger jutting through the hood was completely non-functional. It was carved from wood by a local furniture maker and painted to look like metal. The production couldn't afford a real Hawaiian supercharger, which cost over $1,000 in Australia. They needed the look, not the function. The car's actual engine was a tired 351 cubic inch Cleveland V8, making maybe 200 horsepower on a good day. The furniture maker spent 3 days carving the blower case from laminated hardwood. He studied photos of real superchargers to get the details right. The intake trumps, the belt drive housing, even the mounting flanges were hand-carved and shaped. He finished it with aluminum paint and clear coat. Under film lights, it looked completely real. The crew mounted it through a hole cut in the hood. They sealed around it with rubber gaskets to keep rain out. The wood supercharger created a major continuity problem. It expanded and contracted with temperature changes. In hot sun, it would swell and stick up higher. In cool mornings, it would shrink and sit lower. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot the height differences between scenes. The prop department eventually had to shim it constantly to maintain consistent appearance throughout filming. Number 18. Coca-Cola secretly funded the paint job.
Get in the guts, Barry.
That iconic gloss black paint wasn't paid for by the production budget. Coca-Cola Australia secretly funded it as part of a product placement deal that never materialized. The original agreement involved Max drinking Coke in several scenes. The production took the money, painted the car, then Miller decided product placement ruined the film's dystopian aesthetic. He cut every scene showing recognizable brands. Coca-Cola's marketing team was furious when they saw the final cut. Their products appeared nowhere despite contractual guarantees. They threatened legal action demanding their money back. Miller's lawyer found a loophole. The contract specified prominent brand placement in finished film, but didn't define prominent or specify which products. Miller argued the absence of all brands was an artistic choice affecting everyone equally. The case settled quietly. Coca-Cola got minor credits in Australian release prints that nobody noticed. They also got promotional tie-ins for home video releases years later. The paint job cost them $1,800, a bargain compared to potential exposure. The incident taught Hollywood that Australian filmmakers played by different rules. Miller never took corporate money again after that experience. The black paint became iconic, specifically because it existed in a brand-free dystopian world. Number 17. The Zephyr became the Interceptor's main rival by accident. the yellow Ford Falcon. Zephyr, driven by the bikers, wasn't originally supposed to be a Falcon at all. The script called for a Holden Monaro, GM's Australian muscle car, but the only available Monaro was too valuable for destruction scenes. The property master found a wrecked Zephyr in the same junkyard where they had bought the Interceptor. It cost $40. Someone suggested making it yellow to contrast with the black Interceptor. The decision created an accidental Ford versus Ford rivalry that worked better than the scripted Holden matchup. Both cars were Falcons underneath, with similar performance capabilities. This made the chase scenes more believable. In reality, neither car was particularly fast. The Interceptor's tired Cleveland engine struggled to hit 100 kilometers per hour. The Zephyr was even slower with its standard inline six-cylinder. The camera work and editing made both cars look far faster than they actually performed. The Zephyr survived filming relatively intact, because the production ran out of money before shooting its destruction scene. That scene got cut from the final film. The car was sold after filming for $300 to a crew member who drove it daily for 5 years before realizing what he owned. Number 16. The interior was completely fabricated from aircraft parts. Open the Interceptor's door and you'd find an interior that never existed in any production Falcon. Every switch, gauge, and control surface was fabricated from surplus aircraft components. The production designer raided military salvage yards buying cockpit parts from decommissioned planes. Toggle switches from fighter jets controlled the lights. Altimeter housings became speedometer bezels. Throttle quadrant levers operated the windows. Nothing was automotive. Everything was aviation. The modification served two purposes. Aircraft parts looked futuristic and aggressive, perfect for the film's aesthetic. They were also cheaper than custom automotive fabrication. Military surplus sold for pennies on the dollar. The dashboard alone used components from 3 different aircraft. A navigation panel from a Canberra bomber became the center console. Instrument bezels from a Mirage fighter housed the gauges. Radio equipment from a cargo plane filled the lower dash. The seats came from a different source entirely. They were racing seats from a written-off touring car. The production bought them for $20 at a racetrack swap meet. They were reupholstered in black vinyl to match the interior theme. The steering wheel was the only genuine Ford part retained. Everything else was pure fabrication, creating an interior that looked like nothing else on Earth. Number 15. The wheels were mismatched truck rims. Those aggressive-looking wheels weren't performance parts. They were mismatched truck rims from 3 different vehicles painted black to look uniform. The front wheels came from a Ford F-Series pickup. The rears were off a Chevrolet flatbed. None of them were designed for a Falcon. The bolt patterns didn't match, so the crew machined custom adapters. Each adapter was hand-fabricated from steel plate and cost more than the wheels themselves. The mismatched setup created handling nightmares. The different rim widths and offsets made the car pull constantly to the left. Stunt drivers had to fight the steering wheel during every take. The rear wheels were wider than the front by 3 inches. This gave the car an aggressive stance, but terrible balance. The tires were equally random. 4 different brands, 3 different tread patterns, and varying degrees of wear. The production bought whatever fit the rims from discount tire shops. The wheel adapters failed twice during filming. Bolts sheared off during hard acceleration scenes. The first failure happened at 60 kilometers per hour. The right rear wheel started wobbling violently. The driver managed to stop before it came off completely. After that, the crew inspected and retorqued all wheel bolts daily. They also welded tabs onto the adapters as additional safety measures. Number 14. Maximum speed was 70 miles per hour. The Interceptor couldn't break 70 miles per hour regardless of throttle input. The tired engine, heavy modifications, and mismatched drivetrain prevented higher speeds. Every chase scene showing triple-digit speeds was achieved through camera tricks. They undercranked the film, shooting at 16 frames per second instead of 24. When played back at normal speed, everything appeared 30% faster. The technique was old-school Hollywood magic that worked perfectly. The production tried multiple times to get genuine high-speed footage. The engine would start missing and sputtering past 70. Black smoke would pour from the exhaust. The crew suspected valve float or fuel delivery problems, but couldn't diagnose it properly. They didn't have time or money for proper troubleshooting. The undercranking solution saved production. They could film at safe speeds while creating the illusion of danger. The speed limitation actually helped the stunt drivers. Lower speeds meant more control during the dangerous desert filming. The dirt roads were rough and unpredictable. Hitting them at genuine high speed would have destroyed the car or killed someone. The 70-mile-per-hour maximum became a blessing disguised as a limitation. Modern viewers watching on high-definition screens can spot the undercranking in certain scenes, where background elements move unnaturally fast. Number 13. The exhaust note was dubbed from a different car. That thunderous exhaust sound fans remember wasn't the Interceptor's actual engine. The real Cleveland V8 sounded weak and unhealthy. It had an exhaust leak, worn valves, and probably cracked manifolds. The sound engineers recorded it during test drives and immediately knew they had a problem. It sounded like a sick truck, not a powerful pursuit vehicle. They needed something more aggressive and intimidating for the character. The solution came from an unexpected source. A sound engineer owned a 1971 Ford Falcon GT with a built 351 Cleveland. His car had performance exhaust, high compression pistons, and a radical camshaft. It sounded exactly like the Interceptor should sound. They recorded his car extensively, capturing acceleration, deceleration, idle, and cruise sounds. These recordings were synced to the Interceptor's on-screen appearances in post-production. The dubbed audio created another continuity issue. The engine sound would sometimes continue after the car visibly stopped moving, or the revs would climb, while the tachometer showed steady RPM. Most viewers never noticed because the sound was so compelling. The dubbed exhaust became as iconic as the visual design. When video game developers recreated the Interceptor decades later, they licensed those original sound recordings specifically. Number 12. 3 Interceptors were built, but only one survived. The production actually constructed 3 identical Interceptors for different purposes. The hero car handled close-ups and dialogue scenes. A stunt car performed all action sequences and dangerous driving. A third backup car existed for insurance purposes and parts supply. The hero car was the $50 Junkyard Falcon, fully modified and detailed. It got the painted wooden supercharger, aircraft interior, and careful bodywork. This car never performed stunts or high-speed work. The stunt car started as another wrecked Falcon bought for $75. It received reinforced suspension, a roll cage hidden inside the body, and basic cosmetic work to match the hero car. Its wooden supercharger was cruder, and the interior was incomplete. This car took the abuse during chase scenes and crashes. The backup car was partially completed. It had the black paint and basic modifications, but lacked the detailed finishing work. Only the hero car survived filming. The stunt car was destroyed during the final climactic crash sequence. The backup car was sold incomplete to a crew member for $200. He finished it years later, using photos from the production. Today it exists in a private collection in Melbourne. The hero car changed hands multiple times before selling at auction for $350,000 in 2011. Number 11. The fuel tank was a 5-gallon jerry can. The Interceptor's original fuel tank was removed and replaced with a 5-gallon military jerry can mounted in the trunk. The production couldn't afford to waste fuel filling a 20-gallon tank for short filming sequences. The jerry can solution meant they only carried what they needed for each scene. It also reduced weight and simplified refueling between takes. The modification required rerouting all fuel lines. The small capacity created constant problems. The car would run dry mid-scene. Filming would stop while crew members sprinted with fuel containers. The production kept multiple jerry cans filled and ready at all times. Despite precautions, they lost entire days to fuel issues. The worst incident happened during a critical chase scene. The Interceptor sputtered and died at the climax moment. They were miles from base camp, with no spare fuel. A crew truck had to drive out with emergency supplies. The jerry can modification also caused vapor lock issues. Desert heat would cause fuel to boil in the lines. The engine would die randomly, even with fuel available. The crew learned to wrap fuel lines with heat-reflective tape. They also added an electric fuel pump to maintain pressure. These Band-Aid solutions kept the car running, but never solved the underlying problems completely. Number 10. The headlights were wired to a motorcycle battery. The Interceptor's electrical system was so unreliable that the crew installed a separate motorcycle battery just for the headlights. The original alternator was worn out and couldn't maintain voltage under load. When the headlights came on, the engine would stumble and nearly stall. The dashboard lights would dim to nothing. The production couldn't afford a new alternator or proper electrical repairs. Their solution was typical Australian ingenuity. They mounted a small motorcycle battery in the engine bay and wired the headlights directly to it. The motorcycle battery needed charging between every night. Scene. They kept a portable charger on set, specifically for this purpose. If they forgot to charge it, the lights would fade during filming. Several takes were ruined by dimming headlights that made the footage unusable. The separate battery system meant the headlights operated independently from everything else. You could turn them on with the ignition off. They'd stay on even if the engine died. This actually helped during breakdowns. The crew could keep lighting the scene while mechanics worked on getting the engine running again. The modification added another layer of complexity to an already problematic vehicle. The motorcycle battery would occasionally vibrate loose during rough driving. It would short against the fender, creating spectacular sparks. The crew learned to secure it with multiple tie-down straps and rubber padding to prevent electrical fires. Number 9. The side exhaust pipes were irrigation tubes. Those aggressive side exhaust pipes exiting ahead of the rear wheels weren't exhaust components at all. They were 4-inch aluminum irrigation pipes from a farm supply store. The production needed the aggressive look of side pipes, but couldn't afford real exhaust fabrication. Someone suggested irrigation tubes, which cost $3 per meter. They bought 6 meters, cut them to length, and mounted them to the rocker panels with basic clamps. The pipes were completely hollow and non-functional. The actual exhaust still exited under the rear bumper through the factory location. The irrigation tubes were purely cosmetic. They were painted flat black to look like heat-treated steel. The crew even added fake carbon deposits around the exits by burning rubber and letting smoke stain the aluminum. From 3 feet away, they looked completely authentic. The lightweight aluminum created unexpected problems. At highway speeds, the pipes would start humming and vibrating. The frequency was loud enough to ruin audio recordings. The sound department had to dub all dialogue from scenes featuring side pipe shots. The pipes also heated up dramatically in the desert sun. Several crew members burned themselves touching them between takes, thinking they'd be cool since no exhaust ran through them. The production eventually wrapped them with heat-reflective tape to prevent injuries and reduce the humming noise that plagued filming. Number 8. The steering wheel came from a bus. That massive steering wheel wasn't from any Ford product. It came from a 1965 Leyland bus headed for scrap. The production designer spotted it at the same wrecking yard where they'd found the Interceptor. He liked the aggressive diameter and worn leather grip. It looked like something a road warrior would use. The bus wheel was significantly larger than a standard car steering wheel, approximately 18 inches in diameter, compared to the Falcon's 14-inch factory wheel. Installing it required fabricating a custom hub adapter. The bolt pattern didn't match, and the spline was completely wrong for the Falcon's steering column. A machinist spent 2 days creating an adapter that would work safely. The larger wheel actually improved the car's terrible handling slightly. The increased leverage made steering inputs easier. The tired steering box had significant play, and the big wheel compensated somewhat. The oversized wheel created framing problems for interior shots. It blocked the instrument panel in certain camera angles. The cinematographer had to adjust positioning constantly. Several planned interior shots were abandoned because the wheel dominated the frame too much. The worn leather grip had a distinctive texture that became part of the car's character. Mel Gibson later said, gripping that bus wheel made him feel like he was controlling something massive and barely tamed, which perfectly matched Max's relationship with the Interceptor. Number 7. The black paint was actually 3 different shades. Watch the film carefully and the Interceptor's black paint shifts between scenes. Sometimes it's gloss black, other times matte black, and occasionally it appears charcoal gray. This wasn't a continuity error. The production kept repainting the car as damage occurred, or panels were replaced. They mixed paint batches from whatever black paint was available locally. Automotive suppliers, hardware stores, even industrial coating suppliers contributed to the car's finish over time. The original paint job used the Coca-Cola funded gloss black. That finish got damaged during the first week of desert filming. Sand and rocks sandblasted the paint off in several areas. They repainted affected panels with matte black enamel from a hardware store because it was cheap and dried quickly. The sheen difference was obvious in person, but less noticeable on film. Later repairs used whatever was available. The production embraced the inconsistency as authentically post-apocalyptic. A maintained show car would look wrong in the wasteland setting. The paint variations suggested Max had repaired and repainted sections himself using scavenged materials. George Miller actually liked how the mismatched paint told a story. Each different shade represented another battle survived. The imperfection became part of the aesthetic that made the film feel gritty and real, rather than Hollywood polished. Number 6. The supercharger whine was a dentist drill. That iconic supercharger whine heard when Max accelerates wasn't a real blower. It was a dentist drill recorded at various speeds and mixed with the dubbed engine sounds. The sound design team needed something mechanical and menacing to suggest forced induction. They experimented with various devices before someone suggested a high-speed dental drill. The pitch and frequency were perfect. They borrowed a drill from a dentist in Sydney who was a film enthusiast. The sound engineer recorded it running at different speeds, under load and free spinning. They captured dozens of variations over several hours. The dentist was fascinated watching his medical equipment become movie magic. These recordings were layered into the soundtrack whenever the wooden supercharger appeared on screen. The whine would increase with engine RPM, creating the illusion of a functional blower feeding the engine. The technique was so effective that automotive enthusiasts debated for years what type of supercharger the Interceptor used. Some claimed it was a 671 blower, others insisted it was a 471. Nobody guessed dentist drill because it sounded so authentically mechanical. The sound became inseparable from the car's identity. Modern Mad Max video games and the Fury Road film reference this specific sound design, keeping the dental drill recording alive decades later as the definitive sound of Max's supercharged Interceptor. Number 5. The tires were rejected, racing slicks cut into treads. The Interceptor's aggressive-looking tires weren't street-legal performance rubber. They were rejected racing slicks from a local speedway that the crew hand-cut into pseudo-street tires. The speedway was replacing old slicks and selling them for $2 each. The production bought 12 of them. Using smooth slicks would look wrong and be dangerous on dirt roads, so they carved tread patterns by hand using heated knives. Each tire took approximately 3 hours to cut. They traced patterns from magazine photos of performance tires, then carefully carved grooves into the rubber. The process filled the workshop with burning rubber smell that lingered for weeks. The hand-cut treads were shallow and irregular, but looked aggressive on camera. The tires performed terribly in reality. They had almost no wet traction and wore out incredibly fast. The carved grooves would chunk out during hard driving, leaving rubber pieces scattered across filming locations. The crew went through all 12 tires before filming completed. By the final chase scenes, some tires were nearly bald with barely visible tread remaining. The production kept rotating the best-looking tires to whichever side faced the camera. Modern prop departments would never attempt this, but 1979 Australian filmmaking operated under different rules. Number 4. The roof was lowered 2 inches. The Interceptor sits noticeably lower than a stock Falcon XB. The production sectioned the roof, cutting 2 inches out of the pillars and dropping the entire roof structure. This modification was purely aesthetic. George Miller wanted the car to look meaner and more aggressive. A lowered roofline achieved that perfectly. The modification required cutting all 4 pillars, the windshield frame, and the rear glass area. Every structural element had to be shortened precisely. The work was done by a metal fabricator who specialized in custom hot rods. He charged $800, which consumed a significant portion of the modification, a budget. The lowered roof created immediate problems. Mel Gibson stands 6 feet tall. With the roof 2 inches lower, his head constantly hit the headliner. The crew removed all interior padding to create additional clearance. Gibson still had to slouch during interior shots. The modification weakened the car's structural integrity significantly. The pillars were critical components. Cutting and welding them reduced crash protection substantially. The stunt coordinator worried about rollover sequences, but the production had no money to add proper caging. They proceeded carefully during any scenes involving potential rollovers. The lowered roof became one of the Interceptor's most recognizable features, though it caused endless headaches throughout production. Number 3. The rear spoiler was carved from foam. That aggressive rear spoiler wasn't fiberglass or metal. It was carved from high-density foam by the same furniture maker who created the wooden supercharger. The production needed something lightweight that wouldn't affect the car's already marginal performance. Solid materials would add weight and hurt acceleration. Foam was the perfect solution. The spoiler weighed less than 5 pounds, yet looked substantial and aggressive on camera. The furniture maker shaped it over 2 days using photos of contemporary racing wings as reference. He coated the foam with fiberglass resin to harden the surface, then painted it gloss black to match the body. The technique worked brilliantly for static shots. Problems arose during high-speed filming. At 60+ miles per hour, the lightweight spoiler would flutter and vibrate. The foam flexed under aerodynamic pressure. Several times, it nearly ripped off completely. The crew reinforced the mounting points multiple times. They added internal support struts and stronger adhesives. Nothing completely solved the flexing issue. By the final week of filming, the spoiler showed visible stress cracks in the resin coating. The paint was chipped and faded from constant sun exposure. Post-production crew had to paint out damage in several shots where the deterioration was too obvious to ignore. Number 2. The car was nearly destroyed in a real accident. During the final week of filming, the Interceptor was nearly totaled in an accident that had nothing to do with planned stunts. A transport truck carrying equipment lost control and sideswiped the car while it was parked between takes. The impact crushed the passenger side door, shattered the window, and bent the roof pillar. The production was days from wrapping. They had no backup car and no money for major repairs. Panic set in immediately. George Miller thought they'd have to abandon remaining shots featuring the car. The insurance company sent an assessor who declared it a total loss, but the crew refused to quit. They spent 36 hours straight performing emergency repairs. they couldn't fix the door properly, so they replaced it with a door from a wrecking yard that didn't quite match. The color was slightly different, and the trim was wrong. They painted it quickly and hoped nobody would notice. The bent roof pillar couldn't be straightened completely. It remained slightly out of alignment for remaining scenes. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot both the mismatched door and the bent pillar in the finished film. The near disaster became legend among the crew as the moment that almost killed the Interceptor and the entire production. Number 1. Only the hero car's location is known today.
Best on the bonnet.
Montego. It's a Mercury Montego.
Of the 3 Interceptors built for filming, only one survived with confirmed whereabouts. The hero car was sold at auction in 2011 for $350,000. It now resides in a private collection in California, occasionally appearing at car shows and automotive events. The stunt car was destroyed during filming as planned. The backup car sold to a crew member, but its current location remains unknown, despite decades of searching. Collectors and Mad Max fans have hunted for the backup car for over 40 years. Rumors surface periodically claiming someone found it in a barn or backyard. Every lead has proven false. The crew member who bought it supposedly drove it for several years before selling it in the mid-1980s. The trail goes cold after that sale. No registration records, no photos, no documentation exists. Clip of enthusiasts examining the hero car's details. The authenticated hero car has been meticulously preserved. Its wooden supercharger, aircraft interior, and hand-cut tires remain intact. The mismatched door from the accident is still there, a battle scar from production. Museums have offered millions to acquire it. The owner refuses all offers, preferring to share it at public events where fans can see automotive history up close rather than locked behind museum glass forever. And there you have it. 20 weird facts about the last of the V8 Interceptors that even Mad Max fanatics never knew. Which fact shocked you most? Drop a comment below and smash that like button. Subscribe for more movie car secrets, and remember, sometimes the best movie magic comes from $50 junkyard finds.